I heard he had a shoulder niggle. He hasn't ruptured his Achilles, by the way. You don't rupture your Achilles and do 5 rounds. You rupture your Achilles, you cannot even stand. I believe he's torn his Achilles or calf. He should retire, but if he wants a rematch, we'll look at a rematch, no doubt about that. People were saying Haye could fight Parker if he had won. Haye should fight Wilder. So why not Tony Bellew? Because he's just beaten him. He probably won't get all the credit because of Haye's leg. Those are the words of promoter Eddie Hearn, talking about David Haye potentially having pre-fight injuries before going into the Tony Bellew fight, and also talking about the prospect of Tony Bellew fighting Deontay Wilder or Joseph Parker. Parker in particular had been linked to a fight with David Haye prior to the Bellew fight, so Hearn is saying, look, it's only logical that Tony Bellew instead of David Haye be put forward for the Parker fight instead. Why not? You know, it's logical when you think about it like that on paper, at least from Eddie Hearn's perspective. And I've mentioned in other videos, as far as David Haye's injury, I think it was pre-existing. And as far as him retiring, I also think David Haye should retire. After his defeat to Klitschko, I said that I'd like to see David Haye go back down to cruiserweight. I think he's more effective at cruiserweight, and I think he's just more entertaining and exciting as a cruiserweight. When he's going in there against big heavyweights, he's a bit too one-dimensional. When the heavyweight wants to keep you at long range, a big tall heavyweight wants to keep you at long range, David Haye doesn't have a complex enough skill set to be able to deal with a big tall Vladimir Klitschko type or even an Anthony Joshua type, particularly not at this age that he is now. So if you go back and look at all my videos following the Klitschko loss, I was saying I'd like to see him go back down to cruiserweight. Now, I think it was after the Derek Chisora fight. He was out for a while. He was nearly going to fight Fury, so on and so forth. Those fights fell through. I started saying at that point in all my videos about David Haye, or most of them, that I don't think if David Haye comes back, he will ever fight for the heavyweight title. Because if he has to go through these tough young contenders, somebody's going to beat him. That's what I kept saying over and over again. Right? Long-time subscribers will know that this is what I've been saying for a long time about David Haye. I think somebody will beat him before he gets to fight for the heavyweight title. Now, I certainly did not predict that it would be Tony Bellew to beat him, but I always felt like somebody out there would beat him before he got a crack. Because I just look at his age, I look at his style. David Haye's style was based on reflexes. This is why Adam Booth and David Haye both agreed that Haye would retire by the age of 30. And he extended it to 31, and now it's gone on, and he hasn't retired. So the original plan for me was the most sensible plan, retiring by the age of 30. Because after that, the reflexes slow down. And when you rely so heavily on reflexes rather than technique like David Haye, it's a problem. Because he doesn't have great technique to fall back on. His technique is okay. I mean, it certainly wasn't in a Bellew fight. But if you look in the Chisora fight, so on and so forth, his technique is okay. But he's still a fairly rudimentary and basic fighter, David Haye. He's not a particularly sophisticated fighter. Tyson Fury, for example, is far more sophisticated in what he does in the ring, in my view, than David Haye is. He has a far more complex style from a technical perspective. So, yeah, David Haye traded on athleticism. The athleticism, certainly in his legs, is gone. I just watched an IFL interview with Dillian Whyte, actually, and Dillian Whyte, by the way, before I talk about what he said, Dillian Whyte is very, very astute in terms of boxing. He knows his boxing, Dillian Whyte. Don't get, caught up too much in all the trash talk thinking that Dillian Whyte doesn't know what he's talking about. Dillian Whyte has a very, very knowledgeable mind when it comes to boxing. Very knowledgeable. And he's very observant. And one thing that he said in this IFL interview, which he's just done today, is that David Haye has had problems with his legs for a long time now. Okay, we're talking about ankle, we're talking about knee, etc. He said if you go back and look at the Audley Harrison fight, David Haye had some type of leg support on, a very big leg support in that fight. And Dillian Whyte was saying that shows that his legs ain't been right for a long time. You know? So what happened in the Bellew fight perhaps was a legacy, excuse the pun, of these reoccurring injuries. He's had shoulder injury, he's had leg injury, knee, all kind of stuff. And his former trainer Adam Booth also talked about this, that his injuries could play a part in the Tony Bellew fight. And he said if David Haye is injury-free, he should beat Bellew. David Haye was clearly not injury-free. It is what it is. And as far as Eddie Hearn saying Bellew won't get all the credit because of Haye's leg, you got to take that on the chin. At the end of the day, Tony Bellew said before the fight that David Haye was carrying injuries. He said before the fight that David Haye wasn't throwing his right hand straight anymore. So he can't be mad at people after the fight saying, well, you beat an injured man in there. Because Bellew himself was saying that I'm fighting somebody who's not 100%. And I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Bellew at some point said that's the reason why he took the fight now. That's the reason why he's been calling for the fight for the past year or whatever, because he heard the word on the grapevine David Haye was not the same, that he was suffering with all types of injuries, and maybe he heard sparring stories, and he heard that this guy is just not the same as he used to be. So he felt like this is the time to take it. It is what it is. Let me know how you feel about everything I talked about in this video, the quote from Eddie Hearn. And do you think that David Haye should retire, or do you think he should go on? I know there are stories of people coming back. Shannon Briggs, for example, is a lot older than David Haye. I think he's like 9 years older, 8 or 9 years older. But I'm telling you now, if and when Shannon Briggs fights a top heavyweight, he's going to get destroyed too. It won't just be David Haye having memes made about him. Shannon Briggs, I know Shannon Briggs is very loved by the people, so perhaps they'll go a bit easier on him, but he's going to get destroyed if he fights a top heavyweight, because Shannon Briggs has only got one good round in him. Don't be fooled by the physique and the larger-than-life personality that Briggs has. And I like Briggs. I think he's an entertaining character. I think he's got WWE superstar written all over him. I don't know why Vince McMahon don't give him a call. But in terms of him fighting a top-level boxer, he's going to get destroyed. Yeah? He's been fighting nothing but journeymen. He's been fighting the same level of opposition, maybe even worse, than David Haye fought in his 2 comeback fights. So, anyway, let me end the video right here. Let me know how you feel. It's happening. I'm out.